Right, so as I mentioned a couple times, we're talking about network tables before today. So network tables, some people would call it like a distributed dictionary. That's one of the terms that WPI-lib calls it. It's basically a server, and it has value tables, and it loads these values from the robot, from your laptop, or other coprocessors, such as a Raspberry Pi, which we use for the mini bots. And these network tables, they're pretty straightforward. They have variables with values, their names, and the type of variable they are. What they basically do is they just exchange values between the robot and the laptop. So something like this would be X keys, which is a type of input that we're going to go into after this for a second. And then also, like I mentioned, Raspberry Pi, which is a coprocessor that we use on the mini bot. And it's also something that we use for vision. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second, because what I'm going to do is show you guys what the network tables basically look like. And I have Minibot right here. And I'm also going to show you how to set it up. It's going to take a second. So the first thing you would want to do is connect to the Minibot. I have an Ethernet. Well, you don't have one, but a Minibot at all. But I have an Ethernet cable, so I'm connecting to the Minibot. Other ways to do that would be through Wi-Fi. And if/when we go in person, I will show you guys how to do that. So first thing I'm going to do is share screen. Okay, so I've opened up my terminal window. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called SSH. So SSH pi at raspberry pi.local. And that should be sending me, oh, okay. I forgot to plug in the robot. All right, this is being difficult. Give me 1 second. Okay. Give it a moment. All right, there we go. Okay, now it's connected. So terminal. So I just put in SSH pi at raspberry pi.local. Basically, I'm trying to connect to the Minibot. It's going to ask for the password, which is HHS670. You can't see that, but that's intentional. So this green thing that says pi at Raspberry Pi in my terminal, that means that I'm now connected to the Minibot, and I can send commands to it from there. Second thing you want to do is open up a new terminal. Okay. So I want to find a jar. Yeah, okay. Also, a reminder, if anyone hasn't been there, if anyone hasn't gotten it yet, there's a form in the chat. Let me know if you can't see it and I'll resend it. But that's really important. Make sure you send that out. All right, so I have a jar here. It's called ntserver.jar. What I'm going to do, sorry, running into technical problems. This is our first time using Minibots at workshops, at least for me. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm gonna have you working on some questions later. I'm gonna send them in the chat now if you want to start looking at them, and I'm gonna send you into breakout rooms later. So if you want, while I'm waiting to let this get set up, you can go and check that out. Okay. We're actually going to do that first because they're still taking a moment for it to get set up. So the questions are in the chat. I'm not sure if they'll go away when you guys leave into your different breakout rooms, but there's not a lot of you, so I'm just going to split you up into 2 breakout rooms. Just go through the questions. There's 3 questions and 1 extra question. So go to the link, that's GitHub. That's basically some code for X keys, and just look through the code and see if you can figure out what the code is doing. You don't have to understand everything, but try to answer the questions that are there. And if you still need help, there is a second link that's here. Yeah, so just saying that again, X keys, it's an input device. It listens for things and it sends them. And generally, as you saw, it is commands. Does anyone want to take a shot at what is used to exchange the values? Like what is doing the exchanging?
I think it was smart dashboard.
Yeah, it's also, it's a network table. So just that exchange values between, does anyone know what it is exchanging the values between? I think we also mentioned it in the presentation earlier. Between what 2 items or devices or things are the values being exchanged, are the network tables exchanging values between? If anyone wants to guess. It's on the slide.
Is it between the robot and the laptop?
It is between the robot and the laptop. it's the network table using X keys is exchanging values between the robot and the laptop. Now, does anyone look at here? Let's see, the table add entry listener. This is probably, does anyone have a guess?
Maybe it's like detecting which keys.
If someone just said something, I could not hear it.
Can you hear me?
You're very, very low volume wise.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it like to detect which key is getting pressed?
Yeah, it's adding a listener that listens for what keys are being pressed. It's basically just listens for entries. That's what is being added to the table. Okay, so the things are up and running. So we're going to try this again with the mini bots. And we're going to start from the beginning. All I'm really going to do is I'm just going to pull up the network tables. I'm going to show you what it looks like and give you an example of a value that you can see on it. So first I'm going to SSH back into the Raspberry Pi. And I am now connected to the minibot. Again, anything I type here, those are commands I'm sending to the minibot. Opening up another window, I'm just going to hit cd WPI lib. These are things I have downloaded in my computer. So from WPI lib, I'm going to go into 2020. From there, I'm going to go into something called tools. And now we're going to have a bunch of tools. You might notice smart dashboard is there. But first thing you want to do is back at the SSH, you're going to run something called ifconfig for Macs. It's ipconfig for Windows. This is just going to give you some information about the Pi. What we care about is this address, 169.254.63.239, which would be different, which could vary from minibot to minibot. Now, also on the minibot, I have a jar, NetworkTableServer.jar. So I'm going to run that jar by going server.jar, and it's initialized. So back here, we have all of these tools. The one that I care about right now is outlineviewer.jar. So that's going to help me view my table. So I'm going to run the outline viewer jar. And these steps, if they're confusing, don't worry about it. Since you don't actually have a minibot, it's not that important that you do it. But what's important right now is I'm showing you the end result, which is the network table. So this is what I get when I run the outline viewer. Here, I'm going to copy that IP address I got back here. And I'm going to start it up over here. So this is our network table. Pretty straightforward. On the smart dashboard, we have connected. So we have the key, which is basically the variable name. We have a value and we have a type. So this, the only value right now that's on the dashboard, because I'm not running anything, is it connected? Right now, yes, it is connected. So connected is true, and connected is a Boolean type variable. Any questions on that? Like about what's currently on the screen, not necessarily about or how we got there, I guess, too. I can open up chat. If not, I'm going to go to X keys and go look over the code very quickly. Okay. So this is X keys, which is we used on our 2020 robot. A lot of imports. We have a bunch of subsystems here, and then also a coprocessor. Within here, these are commands and values, basically just mapping those two together. and I'm going to get back to this in a second. So this is the constructor. First, a couple things towards Smart Dashboard. Then we're making all our subsystems here. And then adding entry listeners, which is, there's a lot. You don't need to understand the constructor. But the more important part here is all of these. And if you guys notice and you look at the names, these are things that the robot can do. For example, and if you look here, for extend climber, what we do under extend climber is Mustang scheduler.getInstance.schedule new extend climber. That's scheduling a command. When we run the extend climber command, we tell the scheduler, hey, schedule the extend climber command. So that should look familiar to you, both for subsystems and commands. And all of these, like here, it says extend climber is equal to 12. So if we run this command extend climber, it sends to the network table the value 12. And we have created the robot, therefore, so in such a way that the number 12 will tell the robot extend the climber. So the network table, so the X keys are using the network table to send commands to the robot. And these are things that are reliant on input devices. You wouldn't schedule within the code something like shooting the ball. That would be reliant on you pressing a button during a match. And we're using X keys here for that. All right, any questions on that? Again, you don't need to understand like all of this. Here, it's like if X keys command dot init shooter. So here, where was extend climber? Yeah, if the X keys command that is entered is 12, which is extend climber, then it will run the extend climber command. That's what this big list is. So any questions there?
For the X keys commands, why do they use doubles instead of like an enum or int or something?
Can you say that again? You faded out towards the end.
For the X keys commands, why do they use doubles instead of like an integer like an enum?
We generally use doubles in coding or for these. Some of them like, yeah, I mean, we use doubles in most of our code, unless it's something like angles, but even then we still probably use doubles. Any other questions?
Could you explain the commands part of it again? Like, what does it actually do and what's the purpose of it?
Okay, yeah. So when we schedule commands, there's two ways we can do them. Well, the one that we talked about is within the code, or you can add to the robot. We can say schedule and then new, and then use the constructor of a command to create one. And that's all autonomous because the robot does that on its own, basically. So once we write the code, the robot will do it once we start the program. But that's not really realistic for a match. We can't really program within the program right when we want it to shoot the ball. We want to say, when I press this button, shoot a ball. So X keys is the input device that listens for, okay, they pressed a button, that means shoot the ball. So using, again, the extend climber example. So extend climber, the method extend climber within the X keys class, what it does is it schedules an extend climber command. This is I think it's an instant command, or it might be a command based, but the commands that it's a command like we've been writing, like distance drive or balance drive, and then it schedules it to the scheduler. And we have this key up at the top that says extend climber is equal to 12. Well, basically that means if we press a certain button that corresponds to value 12, if S is equal to X keys command.extend climber, and this is a really long way of calling that number 12, then they're going to run the method extend climber. So X keys is translating 12 into extend the climber to tell the robot to extend the climber.
Okay, that makes more sense. But I have one more question. Why do you need to go the long way of you know, assigning extend climber to 12, then having call it that, and then like, why can't you just call extend climber within that xkey command?
Well, xkeys command is generally linked to some sort of device. Like I think one year we used like just a keyboard, like a dashboard that we made with keys on it, or maybe something, well, a joystick's not applicable, but something like some sort of game controller or whatever. That doesn't have labeled extend climber commands, right? But that may have numbered keys. So if we keep our own thing, we're like, we print onto the 12th digit, we print like, this is the extend climber button, but that button is still 12. Like we can't modify the keyboard to change the value of 12. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
I think someone else had a question. I
kind of just wanted to add to that. Like I was just saying, it's because like it gives each of those values an ID, so that like if you wanted to change them easily, like if you wanted to somehow now that instead of 12 it was 11, you could change it easily.
Yeah.
And then also like it's also using an ID, so just in case like maybe you wanted to have like if you had so many commands, you'd probably need an ID or a specific number for each one.
Yeah. And these are just a bunch of commands that we used on our 2020 robot. So like extend the climber, retract the climber, start the shooter, shoot, increase shooter speed, set the close shot speed, set the mid shot speed, set the long shot speeds. Those are for different, either for different targets or for distances from the target. Shoot all the balls within the indexer or within the robot. Run or turn off the intake, run the intake in or run the intake outwards. Pick up balls, vision. Indexer checks whether, put the indexers at a certain position. Cancel all commands. Okay. Any other questions?
Also, just gonna put this out there quickly. You guys have to fill that form out. I see only one of y'all have filled it out.
Yeah.
Please do that.
And I can send it in the chat again because I don't know if Radhika got it because he joined.
Oh, I got it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. But I sent